Hello and welcome to this program. Today we are going to focus on dissertation, which is one of the courses of the MSc DFSM program. Dissertation is an 8-credit course with major focus on research work. This dissertation basically will provide an opportunity for the learners to develop research skills, and this is the course which gives them hands-down experience of working in the area of nutrition, health, dietetics, any topic which is pressing or which is of interest to the learners. Working in this area in a community setting or in a hospital setting, and planning a study, implementing the study, then collecting data, analyzing the data, interpreting the results, and then presenting a critical analysis of this entire research which they have undertaken, the findings they have had, and presenting it in the form of a report which is submitted for evaluation. So basically the dissertation will develop research skills among our learners. Now, where do we get started? That is what we're going to take you through in this program. We will give you handy guidelines as to how do you start your research, how do you carry it out, and how do you write your report for evaluation. Now, before we go on to the guidelines, there are certain prerequisites which I would like to emphasize. Before you go on to do your dissertation, it is important that you undertake the theory and the practical courses which are part of the program. You know that we have the advanced nutrition, public nutrition, clinical, therapeutic nutrition, entrepreneurship, food service management. Then you also have food microbiology, nutritional biochemistry, food science. These courses will help you with your concepts. It will help you gain knowledge on the principles, concepts, and will help you or guide you in selecting the area in which you would want to undertake the research. Therefore, it is very important that you complete these courses, particularly the practical courses, before you move on to undertake your dissertation. Now, once you have completed your theory practical courses, what you do is approach your program in charge, who will appoint you a supervisor or a guide who will guide you through this entire research process. Now, where do you begin? The first and foremost step in any research activity is to prepare a proposal, the research proposal. What is this research proposal? If you look at the monitors, a research proposal is a plan, a stock of ideas, offers proposed for implementing the research work. Put in simple words, the proposal is a description of what we hope to achieve and how we intend to go about it, which means it is a blueprint of what we intend to do as part of our research, starting from right from deciding on what is the area we want to work on, and from there moving on to why we want to research on this topic. Is there any relevance of working in this area? Moving on to your objectives of your research, to the methodology, how you will carry out the research, with whom, where. All these issues you would realize are important to be planned much before you go and undertake your research work. Remember, a good research proposal is what will make a successful dissertation or a report. Therefore, if you have really meticulously planned your proposal, you have studied, you have analyzed, you have thought over the research area you want to work on and planned it in advance, you would find that undertaking this research becomes very easy for you subsequently. All you have to do is to follow what you have planned. So it's basically a blueprint of what you want to do as part of your research. Now, what are the typical parts of a research proposal. If you look at the monitors, we have tried to put these different aspects which you will cover within your proposal. Now, this proposal primarily is not an elaborate document. It is only a 4 to 5 page document which, like I have said, just gives a blueprint, a kind of a guide for you as to how, what, where you want to undertake this research work. Can we look at the monitors now? If you see, these are, what we've done is to put the typical parts of a research proposal. Your proposal of 4 to 5 pages will cover these aspects. The first and the foremost is the title. The title is the area where or what you want to work on. The next aspect it will include is the introduction. It will include the statement of the problem, purpose of research, significance of research. I will elaborate on each of this in a while, but let us just go through this list. The third aspect it should have is the literature survey, or it will give a perspective of the background of why you are working on this topic. And then you will include the methodology. At least you will plan what kind of the description of your proposed research will come in your methodology, and finally the list of references. Now, if you notice, these are the different parts of your research proposal. Let us start with, say, the title of your study. How do you decide on which area or which topic I want to undertake my research? Well, the first thing is that you should, during your 2 years of study, or say at least 1.5 years of study in the area of dietetics, certainly you would have had your favorite areas or topics which would have been of interest to you. Well, decide or think which were the areas which motivated you or enthused you to undertake or study. It could be in the area of public nutrition, clinical therapeutic nutrition, entrepreneurship, food service management, any area which either is of interest to you or as part of your work. If some of you are already working dietitians, you would want to pick up an area where you are already working. So, decide on a broader area first. Suppose if I were a student and, well, public nutrition really interests me. So I've decided I want to do my research in the area of public nutrition. Now, public nutrition is very vast. What within this area I want to work on? Well, perhaps I can think of working in the area of, say, micronutrient deficiencies. Now, still it's a vast area. It could be vitamin A deficiency, it could be iron deficiency anemia, it could be iodine deficiency. Well, I need to narrow down on one specific deficiency disorder. Say, I feel concerned about iron deficiency anemia. So what I'm doing, I am trying to channelize or narrow down on one topic which will be of interest to me to undertake my research. Once I've identified this, I will have to spell out the title of my study. For example, if I actually want to work in the area of iron deficiency anemia, and I can think of various aspects I can work on, but to me, perhaps implementing a strategy to improve the iron status of a community group is more attractive. So perhaps if I can study the efficacy of implementing a strategy, say iron supplementation or nutrition education to improve iron status of, say, pregnant mothers, so this becomes the title of my study. I hope you are understanding what we are trying to say, that for deciding the title, you have to read, you have to understand, or you have to have an interest in a particular area, and you should be able to narrow down on a specific topic, and within that topic, a specific area do you want to work on? And in doing this, your guide, your supervisor will be of great help. So discuss these issues with your guide, and they will then direct you or help you in deciding or narrowing down on a title. And the title should be self-explanatory. It should be able to give you, or not only you, but anybody who will look at your research will be able to judge from the title what you are planning to study. So the very first thing in preparing a proposal is to decide on a title. Fine. Once we have done, what is the next? Can we get back to the slide? We said the next important aspect is the introduction. Now, within the introduction, what aspects we need to include? The first and the foremost is the introduction should state the research problem, that is the purpose of your study. Why are you working in this area? Then it should provide the context and set the stage for the research questions in such a way as to show its necessity and importance. You should be able to elaborate on why it is necessary or important to work in this area or on this topic. And finally, you should present the rationale for the proposed study. Clearly indicate why it is worth doing research on this particular topic. In what context? In the context of the study, whether it has been done before. Will the study benefit, advance understanding, or influence policy? Let me help you understand this. The example I have taken of iron deficiency anemia and studying the efficacy of intervention strategy like iron supplementation or nutrition education to improve the iron status. Why have I chosen this topic? What is the purpose of undertaking research? The importance. I should be able to elaborate. Why? Because iron deficiency anemia among pregnant women is a public health problem today. And it is important that we plan strategies, or the strategies which are already there. Try out those strategies and see whether they work within the community groups or not. And if they are not working, what are the factors which are influencing? And based on our study, what information or what guidelines can we give to policymakers so as to improve or plan more studies? So what we are doing, we are actually writing about the importance of working on a particular topic or the research topic you have chosen. We are emphasizing the need, the importance, the rationale for undertaking research on this topic. And that is what in your introduction, the very initial 2 to 3 paragraphs should be very well indicate these aspects in the proposal. Once your rationale importance has been emphasized, there are other aspects too which you need to cover. Like, you should describe the major issues and sub-problems to be addressed within your research. You should identify the key independent and dependent variables of the research. And finally, state the objectives or hypotheses or theory of your thesis. Now, what do I mean by objectives? Very often when we ask our learners, what is the objective of your study? It might come as a very global comment saying, my objective of my research is to improve the nutritional status. Is that the objective? No. Here the objectives have to be very, very specific. Again, taking the example of, say, iron deficiency anemia, implementing strategies to improve iron status. Perhaps objective of my studies would be to assess the prevalence of anemia among pregnant women in the community I am working in. Perhaps assess the iron status, the nutrient or the iron intake among pregnant women, to assess the nutrition knowledge attitudes of mothers. That can be one of my objectives. My objective can be to actually develop or prepare a nutrition education program for that group, and finally to assess the efficacy of implementing nutrition education or iron supplementation as a strategy to improve the iron status. So you see, I have listed the specific objectives of undertaking research on that particular topic. This is what is required when I say you have to spell out your objectives. You will notice that your objectives of your study will show you the way to carry out all the activities linked with your research. You will see how in a little while from now. This is about the objectives. Now, in some researches, you might need to have a hypothesis. Like, let me take the same example. You see, in this, my hypothesis can be that, iron supplementation will improve the iron status of pregnant women more than nutrition education. Suppose I start with this hypothesis and I do an intervention study, and I have to now study and either refute this hypothesis that no, iron supplementation is not any better than nutrition education, or based on my findings accept this hypothesis that yes, iron supplementation is better. So not all researchers will have a hypothesis. Some might, and in some cases you might just need to spell out your objectives. So at the research proposal stage, you need to be very clear about why you are working on this area and what are the objectives of your study. Remember, when you complete your study and you go for the evaluation, the viva voce, the first thing your examiner is going to ask you, tell me, why did you take or undertake this research work? And you should be very confident in giving them a reply as to why you decided on this topic and how it is going to benefit either in terms of policy decision, either in terms of improving the the iron status or nutritional status of community groups, or in terms of adding on to the knowledge already known about this topic. Now, to be able to be articulate about the importance of your study, what is important? This is the third part of your proposal. If you remember, the literature review. Remember, we said it should have a background or a literature review. Literature review means what? It is a critical summary of research on a topic of interest, generally prepared to put a research problem in context or to identify gaps and weaknesses in prior studies so as to justify a new investigation. What do we mean by this? Basically, what we are trying to tell you is that the literature review of the work which has already been done in this area will actually help you understand and internalize this problem and will be able to help you in putting down the aspects we have just talked about. Literature review, how do you do it? It is simple. It actually starts, that's why I said you need to be very thorough with your course content. You should be able to, or you should have internalized the knowledge, you should have the knowledge of the concepts, principles on a particular topic. Besides that, what you need to do is review the published articles on this area. You could go to a library, you could look at journals in the library, or online. These days there are many journals which give their articles online. You would like to read these articles and see what is the work which has been done related to your topic. Try to get as much information on how they did the study, what are the aspects they study, what they said was the importance of their study and what was the outcome. All these issues will become clearer through the literature review, and that is the importance of literature review. And this section is again a very important section in your proposal. What you have to do is to provide some information on what has already been done in this area. Now, what is the important function this literature review is doing? What it is doing? It ensures that we are not reinventing the wheel. You see, it's not that every researcher who undertakes a research takes up a very new novel idea. Many a times we research on something which is already being researched. Then why are we doing it? We are doing it to enhance our knowledge or the knowledge on that topic further. It gives credit, a literature review gives credit to those who have laid the groundwork for the research. By going through the literature review, we come to know. For example, when I said that in our country 90% of women, pregnant women, are anemic. How do I know? I haven't worked on it. Somebody else has. There are data, there are studies which indicate that this is the statistics related to iron deficiency anemia among pregnant women, and this is what the literature review is helping me understand. It is giving credit to the work which has already been done, and in that context, what it is doing, it will demonstrate our knowledge on the research problem, that we are talking about a problem about which we have enough information, knowledge. It will demonstrate, if you look at the monitors, it will demonstrate the understanding of the theoretical and the research issues related to the research question. It will show our ability to critically evaluate relevant literature information. What is already there, by reading and critically evaluating and seeing how it is going to be adapted in our study. This is what the literature review is going to do and help us. And it will give us theoretical insights or develop a new model as the conceptual framework for the research. So, in the proposal, our literature review is helping us deciding on the importance or the rationale or the areas we need to include in our study based on the work which has already been done and what we can do further to enhance knowledge. Therefore, in your proposal, these aspects are very important. First 2 to 3 pages perhaps may include this introduction and the review of literature. Alright, now once your understanding of the importance and what work has been done in this area is clear, we can move further. And what is the next thing we do? The next aspect then we consider is the methodology. Now, in the methodology, what are the aspects we will consider? Well, the first and the foremost thing we will consider is the design of the study. What kind of a study I will undertake as part of my research? Well, again taking the example of iron deficiency anemia, and I said my title was Studying the Efficacy of Iron Supplementation or Nutrition Education to Improve the Nutritional Status of Pregnant Women. So in this kind of a study, what kind of research design will I use? Is it going to be an intervention study? Is it going to be an observational study? Is it going to be experimental study, cohort study? What kind? If you remember, as part of the Research Methods and Biostatistics course, these research designs have been explained. So it is important that our learners go through the course Research Methods and Biostatistics and understand what are the different research designs. Only then get back to your proposal and then plan what kind of study you would like to do, or your study will fall under which research design. So the first thing you do is the design of the study. Once you have decided on that, you have to decide on the subjects and participants. If you see, well, if it is we are working with pregnant women, of course our subjects and participants are going to be pregnant women. But how many? That is the size of the sample. Do I take, if I'm working in a community setting, in a community there can be thousands of pregnant women. How many women, or what should be my sample size? That is one important aspect. Once again, if you remember, in your research methods and biostatistics course, we have given you the formula for deciding on the sample size. Please go through those and try to understand what should be your sample size for it to be valid in terms of giving significant results related to the topic. So we have to decide on the sample size. Then we have to also decide how do we select or recruit these subjects. Are we going to do random sampling, or are we going to do clustered sampling? What method we are going to use is the important aspect. Now, after the subjects and the participants have been decided, we move on to the instruments, tools and techniques. Now here I would like to get back when you were working on the proposal in the first section, when I said you need to spell out the objectives. Why was it important that your objectives are very clear? Because you would notice that your instruments, tools, techniques all will be based on the objectives you have spelled out. For example, let me take my first objective. I said I need to assess the prevalence of anemia in the community I am working. Now, what kind of technique am I going to use to assess the iron status? Well, I'm going to maybe use the hemoglobin estimation as a criteria. But which method am I going to use? And am I going to use the sign hemoglobin method? Am I going to use the clinical method? Now, all those, once you have spelled out your objective, you would see your tools, techniques are in line with these objectives. Suppose I say I need to assess the nutrition knowledge attitude of mothers. What tool I would require for assessing nutrition knowledge? Obviously, it's going to be a questionnaire. If I'm going to assess the attitude, it is going to be an attitude scale. So you see what we are doing? Through the objectives, we are identifying the tools, techniques and the instruments we will need as part of the study. Not only the tools, techniques and instruments, also the procedures and activities involved. Procedure in terms of if it is going to be a field level study, how am I going to collect the samples? Once the samples, say the blood samples have been collected, how soon can I get it to the laboratory? What will be the duration of my study? What activities would be involved? Suppose if I'm going to do nutrition education, where I'm going to do it? Am I going to do it in the Anganwadi if it is a community-based study? These issues will all start emerging in the proposal stage itself once you have spelled out your objectives. And that is why now you appreciate why the proposal is important, because all those aspects which you would require when you are researching, you are thinking and planning for them right in the beginning and not waiting to go to the field and then deciding, oh, I forgot that. Here at the planning stage, you are putting all these aspects down on the paper for you to consult and work subsequently. Other than the procedures and activities, another aspect which is very important at the proposal stage is the statistical consideration. You would realize that as part of your study, a lot of data will be collected. What am I going to do with this data? Am I going to take the mean? Am I going to take the standard deviation? If it is an intervention study, I want to show that this group is significant than the others. What statistical test am I going to use to establish this relationship? Am I going to use t-test? Am I going to use ANOVA? Am I going to do some correlation? What we are doing, we are already thinking about the analysis of our data which we will obtain. And accordingly, then you will think of, am I going to do this manually, or do I need a statistical package? If I need one, where will I get one? So you are seeing how at the planning stage you are thinking of the different aspects which might be required in undertaking the research. And along with the statistical consideration, one last aspect is your ethical consideration. You see, particularly when you are working with human subjects, it is very important that you take the ethical clearance. That means consent of either the subjects who are going to be part of your study, or if there is an ethical committee, they should actually review your proposal and should be able to give you a green signal to go and carry out your research. So what we have done so far, we have given you a good idea of how your proposal is going to be prepared. I said earlier, it is going to be a 4 to 5 page document, and it is your proposal which will make your study or break your study. For a successful dissertation or a successful report which is submitted for an evaluation, remember, the proposal is the guiding factor. Many a times you see students who have really worked on their proposal have come up with nice, good work, and which is reflected in their reports. So spend some time in preparing this proposal. A copy of how a proposal should look is already included in your dissertation guideline booklet, which has been given to you as part of the MSc DFSM program. Please look up this copy. It's only a sample to give you an idea how your proposal should look. And in the proposal, the end is the list of references. That is an important section, so that will reflect what review of literature you have done to be able to decide on a topic and plan this study. Fine. So now I hope we can move further, and we hope that this concept of writing a proposal is clear to our learners. Once your proposal is clear, you will present it to your guide. Of course, the guide has been coordinating with you. You have worked this proposal in guidance with your supervisor. Once the supervisor approves your proposal, you can go ahead and carry out your study. Once you start collecting your data, in between, do consult your guide, your supervisor. Time to time, share your data with your supervisor. There can be certain aspects which somehow might have slipped your mind while working on the proposal. So a close interaction with the supervisor will help you while collecting data. Once the data has been collected, how to present the data? You will have to prepare a master chart of all the data you have received or you have collected. Start putting it down on your master sheets. Discuss that with your supervisor. Discuss how you are going to present your work, and that is what I will now take you through, that what your dissertation report is going to look like. Well, like the proposal had different parts, every dissertation more or less follows a simple pattern. If you look at the your monitors, you see any dissertation generally consists of the title of your study, which will be the first page. It has an abstract. What the abstract contains, I will get back to you in a while. You have an introduction. You see, the introduction you have prepared as part of the proposal is also reflected here, but this introduction is going to be more elaborate, and we will see what all we will include. It will have a review of literature. we did a brief review of literature in the proposal. Here, a substantial amount of review and reporting on the work which has been done will come here. Then you will have a section on methods where your entire methodology will be spelled out. What will be spelled out? I will just take. You will have a results section, you will have a discussion section, you will have summary and conclusions of your study, you will have recommendation section, and in the end you will have your bibliography or your references, and lastly annexures and appendices. All the questionnaires or standards or anything you used will be put at the end of your report under the appendices or the annexure section with mention in the report. Now this is a standard format of your dissertation. Let us look at each aspects and see what you would include. First, let us see in the abstract. Abstract is what? That is the first window to your research. Anybody who wants to see what you have done will open the abstract. It is, what is the question being researched? This is what your abstract will tell you. What is the paper about? What was the problem? And what was your objective? What research methods were used? The description of the methods, including the design, procedure, the sample. Very briefly, what were the study findings? Summary of the result, and only the most significant results will be mentioned here, and keywords. Like I said, it is the window to your research. It is barely a page or two. So it has to be a concise, just an idea of what your study was and what are your findings. Once the abstract is presented, the next is the introduction. The introduction is very much similar. The main purpose is to provide the necessary background or context for the research problem and justify the choice of the topic, state the objectives or hypotheses of the investigation undertaken. Okay? The same rationale, importance of your study which we talked earlier must be reflected in your introduction. The evaluator, the first thing they want to see is why you have undertaken this research. So whatever you have presented there, reflect it here, followed by the second point, which is the objectives of the research work. Next comes the literature review section. In this, level of research knowledge that has been developed in the field of study, and thus present what is already known and what remains to be investigated in this area. You must mention the concepts, the definitions or the standards specific to your topic under this section. The research design, the tools, techniques, why you have chosen based on your literature review can also be reflected here. So basically in this section we are reporting on the work which has already been done in this area, and this is the knowledge you would see when you are interpreting your results in the discussion. You will fall back on this literature review. You will compare that my result is this, but according to this study, these were the findings. Whether they match or they do not match, you will have to give justifications for the same. Okay, so your introduction and the literature review together will be about 30 to 40 pages of your report. It has to be an exhaustive study on the problem. So remember, when you are writing your report, do give enough time and your understanding of the topic by reflecting it in the review of literature. Besides the review of literature, the second section, the material and method section, is also very important. I would quickly like to go through the things you need to know. The research design, as I've already said, whether it is a intervention study, experimental study, whatever, emphasize. What is important is to present a graphical representation of the study design. That at one glance the evaluator will get a good idea of how you started. This was the overall population from which you selected a sample. If it is an intervention study, you had a control, you had cases, you compared. So a graphical representation of your design will give the evaluator a good idea of your study design. Then you also need to justify why did you use a particular method. For example, if I say that for iron, for assessing the hemoglobin levels, I use the sign meth hemoglobin method. Why did I use this method? Because literature says that this is the standard method for analyzing hemoglobin. So that is why I used this. So when you are writing in your methodology the reasons why you chose this, you should be able to quote the studies which have been done which show that this method is better than the other methods which are available. So that's what I mean when I say give justification for the method you are using. For example, if you're using a focus group meeting, why are you using? Because you need qualitative data. Emphasize on these aspects when you are putting it in the methodology. Then if you're doing any lab work, in the lab work, you might use media, you might use chemicals, reagents. You should be able to specify what reagents were used, what was the media. All this will come in the method section. If you are using an instrument, for example, then the detailed procedure, for example, using the sign meth hemoglobin, what was the procedure? You carried the vials or the bottles to the field. How did you collect blood? Through the finger prick. So the entire procedure you should be able to document. And how did you develop the tools, techniques, or finalized or standardized the tools? For example, if you're using a questionnaire, how did you develop this questionnaire? Did you pre-test it? How did you validate this questionnaire? All these issues must be presented in your report. And with this material and method, you also need to have graphical presentation if you require, like suppose a nutrition education questionnaire was developed, you can put it in the annexure. But if you prepared a pictorial questionnaire, then you would like to put a copy of this for reference for the examiner in the report itself. In field research, you include the setting of the study, location of the field, how these samples were preserved, transported from the field. These are just ideas to tell you what all you need to include under the methodology section. And with this, you will have your methodology clearly spelled out in the method section. In addition to this, the subject profile and characteristics. For example, in terms of age, social class, religion, education, these aspects need to be included. And what statistical analysis methods have you included? The ethical considerations. All these must be highlighted within your material and method section. And this will form an important component. What we will do is stop our discussion here at the methods, and perhaps in the next program we will get back to you with the results and the discussion section, how to develop your results and your discussion section of your report. Thank you.